Our program tonight is as follows. I'm a board of directors member of a co-op in Condo. I wish my managing agent would do this better. I'm a property manager. Man, I wish my boards would do this better. We need to talk. We had this meeting in 2009. It was a huge success, and we have panel members tonight that will make it once again a huge success. At this point, I will turn it over to Ken Finger. He is our program moderator. He's chief counsel to the BRI and the CCAC. Ken will take it from here. Thanks again for your participation.
Thank you, Jeff. I never know really what a moderator should do, and I assume if there's going to be a fist fight, I have to get in between. But what I did is I looked up a few interesting sayings that I thought I would share with you. A couple from Chinese proverbs. What you cannot avoid, welcome. Do not use a hatchet to remove a fly from your friend's forehead. A couple of English proverbs. Advice when most needed is least heeded. Every garden may have some weeds, and of course let sleeping dogs lie. Thomas Jefferson had a couple of interesting ones. Never spend your money before you have it, and I think that probably goes to the boards. And never buy what you do not want because it is cheap. It will be expensive for you. And finally, Scott Adams, the author of Dilbert, has 10 rules of management. And I thought that was a good way to get into the introduction. Number 1, you're always right, even when you're stupid. Number 2, the physical laws of time and space were meant to be broken. 3, the problem is not a lack of response, it is a lack of meetings. And of course, those of you on boards know there's more than enough meetings. When in doubt, ask for status reports. If you're talking, you're communicating. Low morale is caused by character flaws in your employees. If 10 people can complete a project in 10 days, then one person can complete the project in 1 day. Teamwork is when the other people do the work for you. Employee illness is a manifestation of laziness, and I won't say that to my staff. And when you lose, don't lose the lesson. So those are what I am told are the 10 rules of management. And with that, we will introduce our panel and get them up here. Starting with the 2 managing agents, John Bonito of Garthchester. John, can you have a seat, please? David Amster, Prime Locations. Clemintine Carbo, president of the Homestead Owners Corp. Cesare Manfredi, president of Half Moon Co-op. And Sondra Laskay, vice president of Rockledge Owners. No, I'm going to stand aside. So I can get between you and fighting. Now, you know the program is, of course, the wish list. Clementine has asked that she go first because she is a happy soul that has only good things to say. So, Clementine, the stage is yours.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I'm not an orator, I'm not a speaker. So I'm going to have to read everything I've been thinking about when I was asked to do this. So please be patient with me. I've strayed a little bit from the requested topic simply because I didn't have anything negative. My board doesn't have anything negative to say about our property manager. So I focused on what's working and why at 80 East. If all of this is working for you, that's great. If it's not, take it with a grain of salt. Our property manager has been with us for 15 years. He's trustworthy, dependable, ethical. You have to be in order to handle all of our money, all of the issues of our co-op. His primary goal, which is ours too, is totally for the betterment of the building. He has never put staff, board, or shareholders at risk. He confirms all contractors and vendors who come to our property, confirms that their insurance is correct and they're adequately insured for our protection. My management company uses a service to confirm all vendors are properly licensed, because there's always a risk when they're working at the building. He's able to balance pros and cons on all issues with everybody. He's amazing. He discusses all options when we have projects and special issues to be handled. He always gives us the good and the bad about a project or an issue. If you do this, this may happen, this may happen, this may happen. Be prepared so that we're never taken by surprise. Generally, we have an alternate plan B in mind. He's responsible to everyone's inquiry. Shareholder, porter, board member, anyone, he's always responsive, and he's always been so in a very short period of time. He's got a great relationship with our attorney and our accountant. Both are not part of the management company. They are independent, and he provides them with full access to all of our files. I'm sorry. Managing expectations is one of my favorite phrases and something that he does best. We both feel that when shareholders are provided with information, they feel like they're participating in the building's management. And they feel like they're a good part of the interview. Good information and not so good news at times is always good to give them. He's very understanding about the thought process of our board and is patient. He handles all the questions we have more than adequately. He protects the board and staff, spends a lot of time keeping me out of trouble. He easily resolves conflicts. We don't have too many, but the few that we do, he resolves them for a time being because they just never go away, these three individuals. So he never loses patience or hope. We meet, my property manager, my super, and we meet once a week in my apartment in the morning for about however long it takes. 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour. I keep an open item list, so we go through what's still open and we want to do. The super goes through all of the things that we don't necessarily hear about, see in print, but he lets us know fully what's going on in the building. He does this with my property manager on a separate day anyway, but the three of us participate in great conversation once a week. He likes to shop. Like most everybody at my building, he likes to shop, which is really a treat. He's fun to be with. He's got a great sense of humor, and when it's get down to business, it's get down to business. He does a great job with the super. They always review and confirm all the work on an invoice, that it's been done and it's been done properly before he brings it to me to sign. Every contract that we engage in, he'll go through and then he sends it to our attorney to rewrite for the benefit of the co-op, because the contracts we get are for the benefit of the vendor. Once that's done, he'll bring it for me to sign. His assistant agent and our super handle the parking at our place. And for years it was a nightmare. Finally, Michelle and Morgan have gotten it under control. and it's just a breeze, and we never have a problem with it. Notices and updates. One of us, Brian, me, Michelle, someone does a draft, and then a final goes out to shareholders. It's got great relationships with our municipalities and the politicals in our area, which is always helpful to us. There's no hierarchy there. Everyone is treated the same. Everyone is treated the way we want to be treated. It's sort of been a backward marriage for us, for my property manager and I. He's the fifth manager, but the fourth management company that I've dealt with over the last 22 years. And he's been with us 15 or so years. It was rough in the beginning for me. It's been a learning process for the both of us, but now we're on our honeymoon. It's great working with him every day, or whenever I do have to work with him. We've learned a lot from each other over the past few years. I've learned more than he's learned from me. And when we speak or we email, somehow we always manage to have a very good laugh. It's always a happy time, even when the news is bad. This is just miscellaneous. Our shareholders know, and I believe that's because of our staff, Brian and I, that management and we all share one common goal, which is, to better our building and our homes. Well, we find the team approach works extremely well. Surprisingly, everyone on our team, on our board, we all like each other. And it's a pleasure trying to resolve an issue or coming up with some ideas. People in our building, our shareholders, will speak to newcomers, speak to real estate agents coming into the building. Oh, this is a great place to live. People like being in our building, which is a great sign. Our superintendent, he's phenomenal. He's so phenomenal. Everybody loves him to death. Never says no. Nothing's ever an issue. He's just a blessing. He's a gift to have. Our porters are great. They're warm and friendly and responsive to everyone. We've got a great team. And when I listen to people, I say, oh my God, we've got Nirvana compared to what I hear from you. And that's not fun. At 80 East, I like to call it 80 East. I don't like Homestead's name. No one works for us, but everybody works with us. And that's the attitude we like to have. So be nice, be pleasant, it's so simple to do. When people like you, they go the extra mile for you, which seems to be the case in our building. If you're unhappy with your agent, don't rush to change the management company. Discuss your disappointments with him. Allow the agent time to address whatever it is you're unhappy about. And if that doesn't work, then talk to the superior. Try changing the agent before changing the company. And if it's still not working, after trying all the above, give me a call. That's it, folks.
Thank you, Clementine. We'll take questions, I think, when everyone has had a chance to speak. So next we'll go to a managing agent. Who wants to go? John, you want to go first? David Amster, Prime Locations.
Boy, that's a tough act to follow. I thought it was about 5 years ago, and I guess you corrected me that we did this back in 2009.
March of 2009.
Wow, it's a long time ago.
It really is.
Yeah, time flies. And I think it's important that board members need to understand their role, the managing agent's role, and the staff's role in running a building, or a co-op or condo. It really doesn't matter. First and foremost, it's a business, and as a business, there needs to be a distinct chain of command. The board is there to set the policies on the operation of the property. Management's there to advise the board and enforce those policies, and the building staff is there to carry out those goals. And as Clementine said, and she loves her super, she loves the staff, and that really makes all our jobs a lot easier, because the reality is that's not always the case. And in all too many instances, there's a breakdown in one of those components that creates more problems, more work, and makes managing a property much harder. Boards need to understand that everyone's role in the operation of the property, including the role of each board member. And sometimes board members don't really understand that. You can have 5 or 7 people, you can't have 5 or 7 people giving direction to the property manager and to the building staff. It doesn't work. We like to make sure that, as Clementine said too, that you have a meeting, you have one contact person on a day-to-day basis to work with during the week. Because it's very difficult if you're getting 15 different opinions from 5 to 7 different people. Nothing will ever get done. And then you also have infighting on boards, and then you have the staff complaining that they're getting pulled in different directions. Unfortunately, that's more the reality than it is not the reality. New technologies are great. I mean, when we started this thing 9 years ago, everything makes our lives a lot easier. Cell phones, everybody's able to be in contact. Everybody expects nowadays an instant response, of course, because of email. And I gotta tell you, email is probably the best and worst thing that's ever happened. Because I can tell you for a fact, I probably get 300 to 400 emails a day. And not that I have 300 to 400 valid emails a day, I've got 300 to 400 emails a day because boards are talking to themselves in emails, back and forth, all the time, but I still have to look at those emails and read them. You know how much time that takes during the day? It's like when I open an email that I have to respond to, I respond to the email, guess what? I've got 10 more emails that have come in since I did that, and it's very difficult to pull it together. So a good manager has to be able to multitask. And you have to be able to deal with a lot of different issues at the same time and prioritize the different things that happen during the day. Because there's the email about the super who didn't cut the grass, and then there's the email about the fire in apartment 2L that takes a little priority. The other thing I think boards need to understand about the management business, or the business of management, is what do you really expect from your property manager? It's very easy for a large complex where there's an on-site property manager who's dedicated to that property to be 100% up on every single thing that's going on at that property. And I'd expect that that be the case. But the reality is, in this community where we live in Westchester primarily, the average property is, a 70 to 110 unit building, or, garden apartment complex, townhouse development, what have you. And the reality is, the fees that you pay to the management company and the salaries the management companies pay out are all in direct proportion to how much work and concentration can be done. A 70, 100 unit property paying $30,000 a year in management fees is, you can't expect the manager to be devoted full time to that particular property. However, as a board member, a lot of times that's all you see, because you're not interested in the other 5, 6, 7 other properties that manager may be responsible for. The truth of the matter is that everybody has to understand, in a lot of cases, you get what you pay for. And in a lot of cases, because the business is the way that it is, a lot of times co-ops, condos, they're looking for the cheapest price in management. That doesn't necessarily get you the best quality management. So people have to understand that it's a direct correlation. Take a property manager who is managing 6 properties. He has to do everything for those 6 properties and cover those 6 properties because that's his responsibility. As far as the boards are concerned, they have to understand that, there are other issues that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes you might have to prioritize a more important issue than a less important issue. But that could easily be handled differently. If you want all that attention, well, maybe you should hire a property manager, pay more money so that you get a manager that's handling 4 properties instead of 6 properties or 7 properties. I've interviewed managers from other companies who've handled 10 or 12 properties, co-ops and condos, and I don't see how that's possible. So it's all in relative relation to what you pay for and what you expect from your manager. Obviously, certain building staff is probably the biggest savior of a property. 2 things that really make a property run well: if you have a lot of money, you have a great staff at the property. Because the staff really can make it very difficult on everybody. That's the board, the shareholders, and management. Or they can make it very, very easy because the staff is on top of it. There's a huge difference in the way properties are run that have a great staff, or a great superintendent, great porters, and properties where you're chasing them around, you're fighting them on union issues, you're dragging them into hearings, and you're writing up the staff for every little thing because they're not getting things done. So it's really important that you evaluate the whole situation. Sometimes, you know what, you really have to take a step back and say, how can we better service our shareholders, our unit owners, and increase the value of the property? For board members, a lot of times just try not to micromanage. I know it's hard sometimes because you, realistically, like I said before, this is your only property that you're interested in. So you may see things that you don't feel, well, maybe the manager is not that involved or doesn't see it. Maybe they do, but they're also taking care of a lot of other things at the same time. Limit the emails you send out to the management company, or at least copy them on. It's not necessary, and boards should be very careful. I'm sure Ken would back me up on some of the things that get put into emails when boards start having conversations with each other about issues in the building can be used against you at a later date. But yet, time and time again, I see emails flying around with information that should never be put in writing, but people sometimes don't think. They put it out there, and remember, anything you put out there these days is out there for good. And then you, as Clementine said before, you need to trust your manager. And you really need to understand that we are professionals, trying to do the best job that we can, and with the pieces that we're dealt with. And a lot of times, you know, we take over a property and the disasters. And over time and time, things tend to work out. But the most important factor is that if you feel you are dealing with a lot of big issues, sit down and talk to the manager. Let them know. And I think it's a great idea, as she said before, it's a good idea for the manager to sit down with the board, with the superintendent. And I always encourage boards to maybe bring the super in for the first 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes of a board meeting, so that you can separate these issues. You can find out you're all on the same page and try to work together. It's always better to try to work it out than to fight it out at a later date. Basically, I think management is not a rocket science. It's just trying to do the best job possible for your client. Our job as managers is to make sure the property runs well, that we're able to increase values of the buildings and properties that we manage, and make sure that issues are taken care of. Things don't always happen. Emergencies never happen Monday through Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 10 o'clock in the morning. It's always Friday at 5:30 or 6 o'clock when something happens. And your manager will be there to take care of those things, but it's always the most inappropriate times. So if anyone has any questions, we'll take them afterwards. Basically, my message is, it's a team effort. Management, boards, building staff. If those 3 things can work together, you can have a very well-run property. Thank you.
Sondra, would you like to go next? Sondra Laskay from Rockledge Owners.
Good evening. Well, I must say, Clementine made her building sound like so much fun. I'm selling my apartment and moving to hers. Actually, we're neighbors. I live at 177 East Hartsdale, and she's down at 80, so we're good friends, and it's always a lot of fun. We have 123 units in our building, and they're all owner-occupied. Occasionally, we will allow for a sublet under very strict conditions, so we mostly have owner-occupied people in the building. In the 1990s, when the sponsor turned over the management to the board of directors, the property management company they chose in the early 1990s is still the property management company we have today. So that says a lot about how we've at least learned to work together. You know, we don't always agree on everything, but we've got history. They certainly know the building, and that's very important when you get into these day-to-day systems. Every building's got multiple systems. You go through conversions, you go through elevator repairs or upgrades, all of that. So anyway, when I was asked to be on this panel, I asked the other 6 members of our board to give me one positive and one negative about our property management company. And it was, you know, more positive than negative, but we'll go through them real quick. It's important that the management company has a friendly rapport with both the board members and the staff. It does the day-to-day functions there in the building, as well as our shareholders. When issues come up with shareholders, and we all know that they do, a friendly workout is always much better for all parties than when it gets kind of to the nasty stage. We have a property manager that is willing to make frequent visits to our building on an as-needed basis. And one thing that we found really is important is, besides our direct relationship with the property manager, we need to have and do have a very good relationship with the staff that works in the management building. That's the accounting department. You know, they take in all of our money and they spend most of our money. So we want to know that everything is going on real well. They have someone that handles all the shareholder accounts and keeps that up on a daily basis. And we know how that changes, and how with the Star, some people are getting it depending on when they bought it and when they didn't, and they talk to shareholders, well, I'm getting it, and they want it on a monthly basis. They want to know, well, why am I not getting it? So they get a lot of calls about that. The other thing is for the management company to interface with the other professionals. Dorothy Finger is our counsel, legal counsel, and the management company, the legal, and our CPAs, they all work together very well. And that makes it for a lot easier. Some of the negatives that the board members in my building came up with, and this is a biggie for some of them, we get very frustrated when we call the management company and we just get a voicemail. Leave us a message and we will return your call within 24 hours. It's infuriating if you have a shareholder in your face needing some kind of an answer, or you need an answer, and you gotta wait to get this. So that is something we're really stressing on our management company, that they need to get a receptionist so that at least that receptionist can say, well, I'll take the call and get it to the proper person. So that's one of the negatives that we had. Another one is poorly written communications that's distributed to shareholders, and that's a bad reflection on the board. You know, we've taken over kind of managing that and doing the drafts. I think you mentioned that you do the drafts too, because we know basically what we want to say, and everything is very specialized anymore. And one thing that kind of bothers us is not really monitoring when and how many people are off at the same time. You know, we have things coming up in the building. If we have we only have 3 staff people, a super, an assistant super, and a porter, and doorman. We do have doorman in our building. But it seems like inevitably on busy holidays, inclement weather, or we've got some project going, we'll have 2 people out. And when you only got a staff of 3, that's a pretty good hit. So we would like to see a little bit better management of the personnel. The last 3 years have been really difficult in our building because we've had 2 major capital improvements. We had to do the balconies and the garage. It's a 2-year balcony project. Of course, the shareholders that don't have balconies complain, why do I have to pay? We had a 3-year assessment to go with this. Why do I have to pay for balconies that don't have one? When we got over to doing the garage, likewise, those that don't have cars, why do I have to pay for that assessment? I don't have a car. So our property management company has awarded us the Academy Award for Drama. Anyway, it's all worked out. That all ended January the 1st. We have no more assessments, and life is much more pleasant at 177. Thank you.
Next, we'll have John Bonito from Garthchester Management.
Good evening. Thank you, Ken. Unfortunately, Brandon Furstein was supposed to be here and be one of the speakers, but he had a family emergency, and I do hope it's not anything too severe. Obviously, I wasn't prepared to speak tonight. David did a wonderful job covering just about everything that I would speak about. Clemintine, you were terrific, and that is a terrific building, and the gentleman she was speaking with, actually, I've been with him for over 20 years. He's a terrific person. To me, the most important thing for a successful marriage with management and boards is trust. You have to trust each other. You have to understand the managing agent's role. We're not engineers. We're not insurance brokers. We're not attorneys. Let your professionals do their job. Our job is to work with the board, and the board has to work with us, and we do our best to make everything successful. There's going to be problems. My partner and I always had a difference of opinion. The most difficult thing is the outside management of the property. Accounting is relatively easy. It has to be right. It can't be wrong. But when you're doing waterproofing or major projects, you have to rely upon professional contractors. Some of them can be really good, and some of them can disappoint you. And that makes the manager look bad. It's not intentional. We want you to be happy. That's for sure. David mentioned about follow-up, and we also talk about follow-up with phone calls. Yeah, our company always had a 24-hour policy. Every property manager has to respond. And I always said, even if you have nothing to say, call the person back and say, I can't give you the answer, but I'll get you the answer. That's the most important thing. A shareholder wants to know that you care. And at the same time, the shareholders have to understand, unless it's an emergency, as David said, you may be handling several properties, and they can have emergencies, and that property manager may not be able to get back to you immediately. But you should have a staff. Our management company and David's company has a staff that backs each other up. If it's a true emergency, you'll get help. That's for sure. And yes, you should expect that from your management company. One of the interesting things, I was asked to be a moderator last week in a building, and if I would show you the correspondence that was going back and forth before I had to do this, I said, oh, what am I getting into? It was a very interesting meeting. It was a candidates' night. And there was a tremendous difference of opinions within the candidates. Meanwhile, the audience was terrific. Nobody really had any complaints. They were fighting within. Well, that could be a disaster, because you're going to have boards. If the board's not working together, the managing agent is not going to be successful. You can't expect the property manager to be successful if the boards are not thinking alike. There's going to be difference of opinions, but again, we have to have your help to be successful. And again, I think we'll address any questions you may have later, and I thank you very much.
And our last formal speaker, Cesare Manfredi, President of Half Moon Cooperative South, Inc.
Good evening. I had to rewrite everything because everyone already talked about it. We have a 94-unit co-op in Irvington, New York, and very successful financially and managed very well by our management company. Now, some of the things that my wish list would be that I never get a call from a shareholder about something that should have been taken care of. Now, the high salary of us presidents, it's not a successful use of resources for the president at the high salary they make to get involved in a shareholder thing that I don't like the noise from upstairs or whatever the shareholder issue is. It shouldn't get to me, the manager should handle it, and it's beyond me when it does happen, which it never happens in our case because management does take care of it. Again, on the high use of the president's time, which is not, as I said, a financial good thing to do. President shouldn't have to ask, or the board shouldn't have to ask a management company to look into something, and then a month goes by. Did you look into that? Oh, no, I didn't. And then another month goes by. Did you look into that? No, I didn't. We shouldn't have to remind management half a dozen times to look into something. It may not be an emergency, and if it's an emergency, obviously it needs to be taken care of that day or the next. But many things are not emergencies, and since it's not an emergency, it tends to fall by the wayside, and I have to write myself reminders, and I have to bring it to the meeting and say, here's my list of things I asked you to do for the last year, and you didn't do it. That doesn't happen too often, but when it does, it gets frustrating. Another thing the management should do, and we happen to do it well, is come to the board meeting with an agenda and alternatives for the board to decide. You want a playground, well, we can do this, we can rebuild the existing one, or we can hire an excavator and expand it, but then again, you run into village codes on coverage. We want to avoid going before the planning board, and if you do it this way, we don't have to do it that. And all those alternatives that the board members are not going to understand, and hopefully the property manager living or aware of the Village of Irvington codes can give us some direction, or whatever village or town you happen to be in. There's a building inspector that needs to be involved. If there's an alteration in the building, it may need building department. If there's a supportive wall or a load-bearing wall involved, you definitely have to go to the building inspector. And some property managers have no clue. I mean, I heard stories from one of my neighboring properties that they put a new burner in and never talked to the village. They were fined and had a stop work order. And that should never happen with a property manager that's on top of things with the village or town. You touched on an important point about, we've got 9 board members. You can't have 9 people running to the lawyer or running to the property manager with 9 different ideas. This is not the Supreme Court. What is a minority opinion is a board opinion, and that's the opinion. And in fact, I implore our manager that if you get a call from a board member, oh, you got to investigate a new playground, that you're not to listen to them until you come to the board meeting and the board decides what to look for. Same thing with legal. Anyway, contractors, they got to keep track of contractors. And it's not always the lowest bid. And hopefully our manager runs, as you said, 6 or 7 buildings, so they're much more familiar with contractors who may have done work with them at 4 other buildings. And you get a low bid and you say, well, you know, that guy, we had trouble on property X and this guy's a little more expensive, but we also had good experience at property Y. Let's go with this guy. You know, again, alternatives at the board meetings. Well, like I said, everybody spoke so well on everything that these are the limited things that I had to say. And again, trust is important, and answering the phone is important. You mentioned I retired in 2003, and even then I would check my emails at the end of the day, and I deleted very quickly over 200 or 300 emails in 2003. So I can imagine what the traffic is today. And I have to say, none of our board, I don't see emails from board members. I don't know what's going on at other boards, but we have a very low profile board, or things that just, we're so dark that we don't know what we're doing, but I don't think that's the case. Anyway, thank you for your attention, and thank you for the evening.
I will now take questions. I'd like to make one comment, however, that point that was raised. Emails are dangerous. Avoid them. It is absolutely unnecessary. Don't make your decisions by emails. Don't have legal discussions by emails. We have one board member once who looked out a window and saw somebody falling in a driveway and sent an email and said, "Oh my God, I complained last week about that hole in the driveway. Why didn't they take care of it?" Now, we can laugh at that. It's a true story, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Anyway, what questions do we have?
Joe, right here.
I'll keep it fast. I've had 4 managing companies, 7 agents in 20 years. One particular example, I needed to fire one because he lied to me. All he ever had to do was tell me, "I forgot. I know that they're busy. I get it. I would expect honesty. I'll take honesty over that, over a lie to me any day." I hope that gets instilled in the agents. Be honest to the board. We're human, we get it. They may be demanding members, but if you have 5 or 7 members, I'm gonna bet the majority of them are gonna understand. That's just my point on that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Mary Milan.
Hi, thank you very much. Just 2 quick points I wanted to make. We've also, in the past 20-some-odd years, have had 3 different management companies and about, 5 or 6 agents among them. I'm the treasurer, and I've been the treasurer for about 7 years, so my focus is usually on the money. But of course, the response time to shareholders is something we get comments about, or did over the years, for quite a while. And what I've seen through the years is that in the board's defense, especially a new board, the contracts are written to over-deliver so much, to over-promise so much, that based on what David's saying, yes, we find out later that they have 8, 9, or 10, and the comments are always, "I can't possibly," but that's not the way the contract is written. The contract is written with so many embellishments about how wonderful this is going to be, and there's going to be such a quick turnaround. So honesty, I agree with Joe, is the best policy, and we've had the same situations where rather than just say, "I blew it, I can't do it, it's not a priority," or "let me sit down with the board and set you guys straight," that doesn't happen, and instead you get frustration, at the end. And the other thing is, when I come to these meetings, most of the benefit I get is by talking around the table to people, and the first thing I say to him is, "How do you like your management company?" And sometimes they'll say, "Great," and I said, "Okay, how involved is your board?" And what's scary to me is that some of those answers are, "Oh, they're so good, we don't need to get involved, that's what we pay them for." And that's the other end of the spectrum where people say, "Oh yeah, they're so good," and then a new board comes on and says, "Well, that's because you didn't know what you didn't know." So I think a board has to be someplace in the middle where they do have to get involved, because you don't know. You can base it on just the fact that you're getting good response time, but when it comes to the deeper things like finances and things like that, you have to get involved because you don't know what you don't look into.
Excellent, thank you. Any comments, questions of the panel? Yes,
I'm just
Jeff?
curious,
Wait, let Jeff.
Hang on, Janet, we're on our way.
I was just curious for the board members, how many times a month do you meet, once or twice?
As a board?
Yes.
Our board meets once a month with the property manager, but we often have offshoot meetings amongst us if we've got some ideas. And we don't like to waste time at a board meeting. You know, we like to get through them. And actually, we're friends, so that's a topic of discussion at dinner sometimes, or lunch, or,
Cesar?
but formally once a month.
A program for once a month, but in the course of the year, I would say that at least 2 months, we don't meet because there's nothing to talk about. There's no vote, no issue.
And you just meet
Most
once?
often it's like July, not
once a-
July because that's budget time, but in the winter time, February, people are away, we wouldn't meet
So you just meet once a year with the shareholders
once a year
also?
with the shareholders.
No, we meet quarterly.
Quarterly?
Like a half hour before a board meeting, so we can honestly say, look, we have to wrap it up. Usually it's the same shareholders, and they just need a place to go. Because we keep them pretty well informed, so, you know, it's an enjoyable part of the management.
Sondra, do you have a comment?
Yeah, the 3 years that we were doing all of the construction, we were hand in hand with our property manager, who also became our project manager. Once a week, on a Tuesday, in our building, the property manager would come, the engineer would come, some representative of the construction company would come, and any board members that were available. And we would all sit down and discuss what was going on, because it was, you know, it was multi-million-dollar projects going on, and we needed communication. The property manager had someone that was taking pictures of what was going on, because people couldn't get into the garage. We had to have valet parking, but not go into the garage, it was so unsafe. We set a board up in the lobby. We put those pictures on a weekly basis. We updated it, keeping our shareholders involved in what was going on, so they could see where their money was going, and why we had all the dust, why we had the valet parking, why we had an assessment. And it really helped to keep the tone of the building down.
It's important when you have something major, like we had a major gas main leak, half the building was shut down for a week. And then we had several general meetings to keep everybody informed why we don't have gas, when Con Ed was there, building department was there, and you know, the unknown gets nervous in this. You want to kill the rumors before they get around, because rumors always are. Conspiracy theory goes on, and then what happened. So you want to nip that conspiracy theory in the bud before it runs through the co-op. It's like a cancer. You can't get control of it.
And how many members sit on your board? I'm just curious. 9?
7.
Again, open communication, very, very important, obviously.
And how many units, like you have 9 members for how many units?
94.
And
7 for 123.
7 for 163. And the other thing we do once a year, and this year, I think we invited her last year too, usually around the holidays, but then everybody gets so busy, you can't do it around the holidays. So two things we do. This year, we had the board goes out to dinner with the manager. This year, his wife was able to attend. Because he spends a lot of time at night on the phone with me, not all the time, but he always takes my call. And his wife is a sweetheart, she understands, and she gets to meet the people that he probably talks about once in a while at home.
I can tell you my wife thinks I'm having an affair at the honeymoon.
And just the last part of the question, when you're ready to like start a project, whatever it may be, so do you include the property manager? Do you ask for volunteers from the community? Do you have board members sit on each committee, or what?
Who are you addressing?
Yeah, who are you just?
Well, to board members? To the board?
We're all board members.
No, what I'm saying is,
I'll take a
Okay.
shot. Anything that goes on in the property, whether it's $50,000 or we're going to put fertilizers out on the lawn, or the gutter guy is going to come and clean the gutters, gets a notice. Everybody has we have a policy, everybody has to be informed. The tree guy is coming to trim the trees, and I write a newsletter about every couple of months for just things that pop into my head. I'll take a note and send it out. But they need to know who's on the property. And another thing that was important, we had some solicitors, so I went to the police. And our village happens to have a solicitor's law where anybody who's going door to door needs to get a, I forget what it's called, a permit or a registration from the police department. And I told our shareholders, you can ask if they have it, if they don't have it, call the police. And that's an important, I don't know about other villages, but our village comes. We've had some strangers on the property, and they call me and say, gee, there's a stranger, what are you calling me for? Call the police.
I also think it's important, and I always encourage boards, don't just have an annual meeting. Well, at least once during the year, or even prior to the annual meeting. Have an info meeting. Let the shareholders see that you're interested in hearing what they have to say and getting, the correct information out there. Because all too often, sometimes, especially in some larger properties, but also in smaller properties, misinformation goes out because boards don't share information with a lot of shareholders. And sometimes that creates big problems. But if you have a meeting in between, in the middle of the year, you'll see that it calms down a lot of situations. And the biggest thing I get from boards sometimes is, nobody's coming out to our annual meeting, we're not getting quorums. Why? People don't care? Well, there's usually two reasons why people don't care or don't come. It's either they feel that everything is going very well at the meeting, or they don't care. If something is going bad, trust me, they'll be out there. Announce a 15% vacancy increase, a couple of weeks before your annual, you get a full turnout. But it's really, really important to share that information, and then you'll see your annuals are much calmer, and the animosity is not there. The annual should be to elect officers and give reports. It shouldn't be because, well, it's been a year since we heard anything, and there's all kinds of rumors popping around that aren't necessarily true. So I think communication is really important.
Okay.
Yeah, is your communication only through memos and newsletters, or do you use social media? I know, Cesare, I know your answer.
I wouldn't do social media because I don't know what it is. But with that one meeting, we had a social, not a annual meeting. We had a social with coffee and donuts and just people sitting around talking. And one of the shareholders, a younger person, invited him. Took the bull by the horns and created a Facebook, not a website, a Facebook
Page.
Half Moon Families, and about 25 or 30 people have gotten on it because a lot of them have kids and they want to do play dates and stuff. So I know that has happened, but I can't do that because I don't know what it is.
But that's not coming from the board.
I'm sorry, that's not coming really from the board. It's really a social thing.
Well, I put it out in the newsletters and in the newsletter, in our minutes, that there is such a thing, and you're encouraged to look at this website established by one of our shareholders. So I do promote it, but it's not.
But it's not coming from the board, it's coming from a shareholder. And it's just strictly for social events, not to communicate things that are going on around the property, or not for the shareholders to complain to the board or management about something.
Well, in terms of complaints, they all know we have a meeting once a month, and they're free to come for the first 15 minutes and say whatever they need to say. We had a young woman come in to talk about the playground to be upgraded, and we're now looking at the upgrading of the playground that she came in. So there is an avenue to come in, and I'm retired. I walk the property almost every day. So I run into people and they communicate what the issues are. And that's unique to me because I'm around.
Sondra, Clem, do you have a Facebook page or anything at your properties?
No, we don't. Someone had tried to put up a website for AP East, but it never was updated, it never got followed up, and nobody looked at it, and we just, no, we don't.
We have had discussions, we do have ongoing discussions about that. We're trying to weigh the pros and cons. Everyone's concerned with hacking. If we get all of this information from our your shareholders get all these emails and everything, what's the liability to the board if they get hacked in? Who's going to monitor those? Who's going to get them updated? We have someone on the board that has a tech company. He's willing to do it, and we can discuss it, but we haven't come to a final discussion and a decision about whether we're going to do it or not. So if anybody's got opinions about this, we'd like to hear it.
Thank you.
We have another question?
No, I have an opinion.
You have a comment, all right?
Comment.
Karen Gongora and her comment.
My comment, right. I'm in the same co-op development as Janet and Glenn and Les. And what we use is Building Link. I don't know if anybody else here uses Building Link, but you pay for that. And they come and they set it up. And so we put, all our residents are on there. Their emergency contact information is on there, their contact information. They put their emails on there, their phone numbers. And what happens is if we have an emergency and we need to send out a robocall, I can get on there on the Building Link and put in an emergency call that goes out to all the residents. We can send out emails. I do the parking for the co-op, and all the parking is on there. I have all the parking is assigned on there, you know, the car information and everything, you know, what space they're assigned to. We have waiting lists for carport and garage, so when a space opens up, I could just select, I have them in groups, you know, like the carport list as a group and the garage as a group, and I'll just send out everybody an email, the space is opened up, let me know if you're interested, that kind of thing. We use it to post communication, you know, about things that are happening. You know, our minutes go up on there so the residents can go and access it. Our house rules are on there, our pet rules, the maps of where they can walk their dogs, everything is on there. We also have, our amenities are on there, so if they want to reserve any of the amenities, they can go through that and then the board can go ahead and approve it. They can also put in maintenance requests and it goes right to our staff. And then we can look and see what items are open, what items have been closed, what items are waiting. You know, our super at the monthly meetings printed out, and we have a report of, like, you know, all the apartments he's done service in and what vendors have come to the building and that kind of stuff. I think that we are not probably using it to its full capacity, we're underutilizing it. But, you know, just listening here to what you do, I'm getting ideas of how we can maybe use Building Link to do more for us.
Two questions about that. How secure is it? What does it cost?
They charge per unit, so it depends on how many units you have. For us, I think it's about $3,000 a year. And they will come and they will help set it up. They'll train your staff, they'll train you how to use it. They'll train the residents how to use it, like they'll come in and they'll have a little thing for them and show them. And, you know, they have like bulletin boards and stuff so the residents can communicate between themselves, they can post their pictures on there, and it's secure in that, you know, somebody outside our co-op cannot gain access to it unless I give them access to it, so I have to assign them a username and a password, and then they can have access to it. So it's nice, and they have a lot of different options, so you discuss with them what it is that you need it for. They have another product that goes along with it, which is, I think, is it KeyLink or something? It's where you can have, like, all the keys to all the units in your apartment are secured and locked up in a thing that, you know, that's very secure, so that we don't have that, but, you know, I've been wanting to get that for our co-op. So, like, let's say a super needs to have a key to access somebody's apartment. You know, right now, like, we have it in a locked unit, but in this thing, I think it reassigns a number to it, so nobody knows what key will open up which one, because the system assigns an arbitrary code to it. So if you want to get into an apartment, I guess you key in what it is, and it'll take you to that key. But, like, nobody knows, like, which key opens what. It's anyway, it's something worth looking into, but they have that also.
Ken, from a legal standpoint, what do you think about
They've been around for a long time because I've been seeing them at the condo, the Coop Condo Expo for years. And,
You know, one of the issues I would have is that I can think of a meeting, 20 people who are elderly and don't have computers.
Exactly.
well, what happens is the people that don't have it, our staff, they all have like smartphones. So we've told them that if they go and do a repair and that person wasn't able. What?
Not in
I hope they have a flip phone.
See them.
Oh, well, we pay for their phone. You know, we provide them with the phone. And so they can go with their phone, and if they didn't enter it into Building Link, they can enter it for them on Building Link. And if I need to do a communication, it lets me know which residents don't have an email, and then it prints out a PDF, and then we just put it in their door.
One thing that I'll encourage everybody to do it, we make it mandatory that we must have a key
Oh,
to
absolutely.
the apartment.
We have a key for everybody's
And
apartment.
that's one thing I wanted to reinforce for everybody. We've had at least a half a dozen medical emergencies where the police would come and we had to have a key to get in, and unfortunately, there was an elderly person on the floor several occasions, and without getting into the details, that was lucky we had the key. Several shareholders, and thank God you made us give it the key.
Yeah, no, it's important to have the key, absolutely. But anyways, that's what we
Thank you,
use.
no, very positive. Any other questions, or is that it? If that's it, thank you.
Ken, I'm sorry, we have a closing comment from our chair, CCAC Chair Diana Varil.
Well, I would just like to say thank you to all of you for coming this evening and having come throughout the year to these programs. This is probably our last one of the season, but that doesn't mean we're going to go to sleep. We're going to be busy thinking of the things that we can present to you next year that will be helpful. Please remember, if you have any ideas of any meetings, topics that you would like to hear about, get in touch with Jeff at the BRI, and we will put them together for next year. But please, let us hear from you, because we can't serve you if you don't tell us what you want to know about. Have a wonderful summer, enjoy the rest, and we'll look forward to seeing you and more people in September.
Thank you very much.
Many thanks to Cesare, Sondra, Clementine, Dave Amster, and our super pinch hitter, John Bonito. Thanks to you, have a good evening.